There's a design principle that I've recently read about called MEA. It stands for most advanced yet acceptable. In short, it basically means something that is different enough from the past to feel new, yet it has enough of the past to feel acceptable. We've seen this within Apple. The iPad was a massive success because of the evolution of the iPod into the iPhone. It was simply a larger device that we'd become accustomed to. That's the design principle in a very simple way. But the reason I said all that and the relevancy of all of this is down to these two watches that we're looking at today. There's enough differences between these two watches and the hype variants of them for them to be more interesting, to have more character and to stand out. Yet there are elements of these watches that feel nicely familiar. And together, they make a brilliant two-watch collection. Mr. Porter, the sponsor of this video, has brought together a new collection of watches which they're calling Keeping Time. It's based around the theme of music, rhythm and style. The collection brings together 10 of the most significant watch releases of this year. There will be affiliated links in the description down below and the first comment so you can check out the watches for yourself, and that obviously helps the channel out as well. But I have two watches with me today, and these two watches, they feel, as I said in the intro, they feel nicely familiar, yet they have a lot more character than perhaps the more hypey versions of these watches. I have the Baume and Mercier Riviera Baumatic and the Hermes Slim de Hermes Automatic GMT. We're going to check out the Baume and Mercier first, and I want to get hands-on with this because it perfectly fits into the very hyped and very popular category of integrated bracelet sports watches. This has an interesting dial and a surprisingly impressive movement inside, and it doesn't really make sense that this is only, it's still a lot of money. £3,380 is a lot of money, but within the watch world, you're getting a huge amount of watch for the money. Let's go through the specs before we talk about the rest of the movement. So this has a 42mm stainless steel case. It's 10.66mm thick, and this is it on my 6.5-inch wrist, or roughly 16 to 17 centimeter wrist. It has a smoky grey sapphire crystal dial, and of course a sapphire crystal on the front and on the back. We have dolphin hands which are rhodium plated, and the integrated bracelet is removable. 42mm isn't massive for today's standards, but it's also not small, but it's very wearable because it's just over 10mm thick. So this will slide under a cuff and be perfect for an everyday watch. Although it doesn't really need to slide under a cuff because the next watch does that better. Let's talk about the movement. So this is powered by the Baumatic BM13-1975A. This is technically an in-house movement because Richemont has their own movement manufacturer, and Richemont owns Baume and Mercier, and so similar to the Swatch Group and most watch brands, they have a group manufacturer and then the different brands are able to call it in-house. But this movement has been designed and built for Baume and Mercier themselves. It's automatic, as you can see, with the big rotors. It beats at 28,800 vibrations an hour, has 21 joules, but the big standout thing is the fact that this has 120 hours of power reserve. That's 5 days of power reserve. It's quite crazy, really. It's also got a fancy balance spring as well. It's got 2 layers of silicon, and because it's silicon, it means that this movement is very anti-magnetic. Now, I did have to double check the price because the price does seem ridiculous on this. This just didn't make sense to me. The build quality is miles above this price range. That, along with this level of finishing and this performance of movement, it seems 3,380 quid seems nuts. But we shouldn't shout about that too much because we don't want watch brands to put up their prices. So, good on Baume and Mercier. The second watch we're going to check out, I feel is slightly more controversial because it's Hermes. Hermes are more known for their fancy scars with intricate patterns, but Hermes has been making watches for nearly 100 years. Yeah, I feel press around Hermes watches is really very new. They're kind of seen as an outsider as opposed to part of normal watchmaking worlds, especially since they invested in their movement manufacture in 2012. So it's not like these guys are new to this game. This is the Slim de Hermes Automatic GMT reference. I'm not going to say the reference, it's a massive silly reference. The case is solid platinum. It's 39mm wider, it's 9.5mm thick, so this is very cuffable. It will slide under a cuff easily. This is it again on my 6.5 inch wrist, or 16 to 17 centimeter wrist. We have a sapphire crystal front with an anti-reflective coating and a sapphire crystal back, and we have a grey, another grey transparent dial. This has 30 meters of rust resistance, and I'll show you something funny going on with the crystal, and I'll show you that in a second. The movement inside is the automatic caliber H1950. Has a GMT function, a date function, and a local and home time indicator as well. This again is classed as an in-house movement because Hermes owns 25% of its movement manufacturer. Again, these guys aren't messing about. This is more pricey though, and I guess that shows they're not messing about. This is £20,370, but it is platinum, so it kind of makes sense. I'm not a particularly adventurous person when it comes to design. I'm wearing a three-handed old 36mm watch, and so I'm not particularly playful when it comes to design, but that's what I like about Hermes, is that there's enough playfulness about their designs for it to feel fun and different and interesting, yet there's enough traditional about the watch for it to feel familiar. And that's the whole point about that intro, is that this watch does feel new, modern and different, yet it is very traditional in its little elements. The dial, for example, we have that very smoky dial with very traditional engine turned patterns on the movement in the background. We have a very traditional case, yet if you look at the numerals, they're really quite sterile and neutral. If it wasn't for the little break in every numeral that then makes them playful. Usually, when you mix tradition with playfulness, it kind of creates this separation, a bit of discord. But within this instance, I feel they've done it. It all kind of comes together. The most interesting part, or most weird part, or a little Easter egg within the watch, is a sapphire crystal on the front. It has this, I've never seen this before, I don't know how to describe it. I'm going to call it a frosting effect, a speckled effect. There's essentially a vignette added onto the crystal, and it gives it this kind of 3D vignetting of the dial underneath. When the hands move past these little dots, it reflects, it basically darkens, I don't know how to describe it. You can see it now. It darkens the whole dial and the hands. It's a clever idea. It's a subtle idea and something that you wouldn't notice unless you had the watch really in hand. It's clever. I have a boring watch collection myself, and I'm a relatively boring person. I have lots, I think I have about 14 grey jumpers now, and I wear one pair of, I have multiple pairs, but I have one style of jean that's it. And tan boots, that's my style. But I love watches that are different from the normal trend, the more normal styling. And that's what I like about these watches, is that they stand out as being different and interesting. This Hermes makes for a perfect dress watch or a smart casual watch. You could legitimately wear this with a suit, or just with a shirt and chinos, or with shorts and t-shirts. It doesn't really matter. The big thing that stands out with this is that if you compare it to its competitors, its rivals, the normal models of watches that fit within the dress watch category, this plays alongside those models, but it stands out as being the interesting one. The same can be said for the Riviera in its category of being an integrated bracelet sports watch. It fits that bill perfectly, but it's also different from the norm. It's much more accessible than most of them, and it's also a bit more interesting. As I mentioned earlier, there'll be affiliated links down below if you want to check out these watches on Mr. Porter. Other honourable mentions of Mr. Porter's Keeping Time collection has to be the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Tourbillon skeleton in rose gold. This thing is stunning. I've had this on the wrist and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's a cool £179,000. I mean, not many people can afford to do that, but another honourable mention would have to be the IWC Big Pilot 43. I also had this on the wrist. This is the green version and it's slightly more affordable at £7,500. Check out these watches in the links below. Let me know what you think of Hermes. Let me know what you think of the Baume Mercier. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you like the style of this video, then hit the subscribe button down there and that little bell icon to get notifications when I drop a new video. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow at Bark and Jack, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.